What's up, everybody? This is Cody Johnson again with Chapel Hill Training. I'm excited to be here for another episode of the Fitlosophies Podcast. So if you are listening in, you are probably aware that we have not had a podcast come out regularly since the beginning of the year. We had our last one with Crystal Schiller on menopause, and we are getting back into our flow of getting these things recorded. If you are not necessarily involved with Chapel Hill Training on the day-to-day, then you are probably not aware that we moved to a new location. So the last, I would say the last 5 months, so we're recording this on May 16th. So the last 5 months have been pretty intensive working on our new location, getting all of our equipment in, building out the studio, getting our big, beautiful outside space put together. If you've been reading the newsletter, then you know that I've been harping on that a lot because it does look really awesome, and I'm super proud of that. But there's been a lot going on behind the scenes, so you may have just been wondering about what our plans are for the podcast going forward, and if you are a reader of the blogs that we were previously doing, what our plan is with that. So the plan is to kind of really keep doing this. I think we're only 5 episodes in now, so we really haven't found our footing, and I haven't really figured out the paths that I want to take this and what I want to do with it. Or what people respond to, because I think it's also important to know what people want to hear me talk about. Although it is nice to just kind of choose whatever I'd like, I think it is also important to kind of hear what people want to say and people want to hear. But our plan is to kind of keep it moving. Going for the kind of near future, I want to get back to talking more about kind of just the personal training industry, how Chapel Hill Training has evolved itself over the last 15 years within that, and a little bit more on the CHT-centric stuff and kind of how we're positioned and what we can kind of do for people and what we've been doing on both the client-facing side and the trainer-facing side and the business owner-facing side, as well as kind of just make sure that I'm helping keep people aware and knowledgeable about topics or current events or the landscape of the industry as a whole. I think it's a really good outlet, one for me. Originally, I think in the very first episode, this was not something that I thought I was going to enjoy doing. I don't necessarily like talking about myself that much, but here we are anyway. And I've kind of enjoyed being able to put my beliefs out there, put my my actions and things into the world, and see how it goes and see how people respond and like them and if it has any effect out there. So that's what we're going to keep doing. And that's what my goal is with this and what we're going to keep working on. My dream is hopefully to get a little bit of the blog post coming back too, because I do kind of miss writing a little bit. And I know that for some people, and even myself, sometimes writing is a little bit easier to do and find a flow and get a little bit more direct to things instead of going on these long tangents, kind of like I'm doing now. But that is okay. And eventually I will get those. And I do have some cool stuff in there that I think that I've started writing that I think will be beneficial. So what else has been going on with Chapel Hill Training overall? And what's coming up. So like I said, we moved, relocated to a really great space. The staff are all very excited about it. We're all kind of settled in now, and we are about to go 100% action, right? We're going to be redeveloping some of our policies and administrative work and the way that we kind of handle day-to-day administrative tasks in order to produce an even better product and service for you all. We're going to continue on our continuing education. We've got a lot of community events to get involved with that we've done in the past that we're going to get right back on board because those have fallen off a little bit. So we just had Dumbbells and DJs last night. We're going to have a Barbells and Brunch coming up this Saturday, May 31st, which should be a really fun one to get back into, and we've got some new neighbors at the 140 West Plaza, which we're at, so hopefully they'll be open and we'll be able to kind of go over there and support our other local businesses. And then we got some things on the horizon, like another Push-Ups for Puppies event, hopefully getting our other partners in from body mass composition testing to talk about body composition, DEXA scan, nutrition, lifestyle habits, and things like that, as well as some other more educational topics and things out there in the future. So really going to hopefully get back to a return of all of these wonderful things that we've been doing the last couple of years that really our priorities shifted a little bit in terms of just getting back on board. We're also going to be dropping one of our first merch drops coming up in June. So be on the lookout for that, for some new THT t-shirts, and hopefully you will like them. And I will make sure to include a link when they go live, as well as update you all on socials, as well as in our newsletter. So with all of that out of the way, I know I just rambled a little bit about what's kind of the landscape is and what's going on, but I want to kind of give you guys an overview and a check-in about what's been happening behind the scenes. So going forward today, I think if I'm getting back to our roots of where we've been, and I'm going to preface this with a little anecdote, but I'm watch stuff on Instagram and on TikTok and all of that, and I'm always looking at creators and looking for inspiration or looking for people that I feel like are putting good things out there. And I've been following a guy, Joe Blanchett. His Instagram handle is Joe Blanchett Fitness on Instagram. And he's got a series that's called Fitness is Political. And one of the things that he describes in that is he talks about the way that the political landscape or the environment that people exist in has its influence on what we're capable of doing, what we're able to do, and how we're able to access resources that benefit our health, our fitness levels, our well-being, and so much more. I think in the past, I've discussed this a little bit. A lot of times I think I've come from the angle of discussing the environment that I've created here at Chapel Hill Training and why I think it's good, but I haven't necessarily talked about the interaction between the landscape that exists out there in the personal training industry and beyond that in society as a whole, and how that impacts myself and my job and career here, as well as my staff members. And on the flip side, one of the things that I think isn't quite discussed enough is how we as business owners and we as trainers or working anyway, we can also have an impact on the landscape and the environment around us with the way that we choose to enact policies within our business, the way that we interact with people on a day-to-day basis, or the way that we, render our services. And I think that that's something that's often forgotten about, that when you're building a community within your business, or you're part of a community, at a place that you go exercise or a place that you frequent, you do actually have a real impact on people around you, and those people have an impact on people around them, and you see that in the way that culture is developed. And so I think it's important to, one, give credence to the effects that both the environment that we live in has on us, but also what we can do in our environment. And I think that it's important to validate that, which is why today's discussion is going to be a little bit of talking about the personal training landscape, the personal training career, its viability in the long term, and a lot of the things that I put into practice here at Chapel Hill Training that have helped push those boundaries. And hopefully what I'm hoping to get here is that we, as the people that have power in this situation, we have the ability to change that landscape around us for the better, and hopefully create a long-term viable career as personal trainers. All right, so that was a long overview. Hopefully that was succinct enough, but let's start off. So personal training career, right? We're going to talk about this a little bit because it's relatively recent that this has become a career per se. I mentioned this in my conversation with Anna. Maybe Anna mentioned it. I know we talked about it in our podcast a couple episodes back. So if you haven't listened to that one, make sure you go back and watch it. It was a really good discussion on the way that we use continuing education and Anna's role with CHT, and just good, I think, advice for other business owners out there. But one thing we talked about was how, for the most part, at least for myself coming into the personal training industry, personal training was looked at as like a job. It was looked at as something that you do either part-time while you have another full-time career, or something that maybe you do for a couple years in between going to grad school, or in between other jobs and other industries that you think are, or not even that you think, but that society deems as valuable, or in a way that's going to provide something beyond that. And because that was always the case, partially the reason was there wasn't quite enough demand within the personal training industry for people to come and get information. Although that has been changing with the aging demographic of the United States, that people want to live longer and they want to live healthier lives. And there's a lot more information and knowledge surrounding what creates a healthy lifestyle and how much unhealthy habits and things that we have as Americans in society. But without that kind of baseline knowledge being there wasn't a whole lot of people that were looking for personal training. And frankly, there wasn't a lot of people who valued personal training for what it could do and what it could provide. It's relatively recent that this has become something that people actually have the ability on a larger scale to do as a long-time career. And as someone who kind of came up in an era where it was, I say it came up in the era, I'm only 33 at this time, but it came up in the era, we're still going to use that, came up in the era where really, and I remember this distinctly, my brother asked me what I was going to do for my career when I was, I think, 22 or 23. And I was like, well, I think I'm just going to do this. And he's like, no, like, really, what are you going to do? And I was like, I mean, seriously, this. And I think coming with that little chip on my shoulder a little bit, I wanted to make sure that I was creating something that could withstand the test of time and that people could come and work at for as long as they wanted, in a way that would make sense for them advancing their career. What that meant was I had to take a pretty good look at the personal training industry, and what landscape existed in terms of how people could actually have a career and what that actually means when we looked at security, we looked at financial security, we looked at work-life balance and things like that that are going to impact someone's ability to have a job and have a career for a long time. Where does advancement come from? Where does progression come from? Where do all of these things that actually matter when you look at goal setting, you look at where you might be in 20 to 40 years, how can a business get you to where you would like to be? And ultimately, that was that starting desire for what I wanted to do. So the personal training landscape, it's a hard career. I'm not going to lie to you. I've got some statistics pulled up based on a newsletter that I sent out recently. But talking about the job overall, and one of the things that I think is talked about enough, but it's not talked about and how it's solved enough, is burnout rates. So pre-COVID-19, so pre-pandemic, this would now be 5 years ago or so, 6 years ago, personal training industry boasted a 33% burnout rate among everyone who was working in it, which is incredible. And incredible, I mean, it is incredibly high. That's a lot. Like 1 in 3 people were burnt out, likely from working full days, meaning they were there for most people before normal work hours, so pre-8 or 9 a.m., so 5, 6, 7 a.m. in the morning, and then also after work hours, so after 5, after 6 p.m., and working until 8, and then doing that again on the next day, trying to get enough hours in the day, trying to have enough people scheduled in order to make a consistent living. And looking at that, that's obviously something that's not super sustainable in the long term. And that's going to be a big hindrance if people are coming into the industry with this belief that, like, yeah, I know like hours are going to stink, I'm going to like my job a lot, but it's really not going to be that viable for me to have a life outside of this unless I really figure out a way to make time for it. And as most of us know in the industry, that's not something you can do when you're starting off. And when you are typically young, just fresh out of college, yeah, maybe it's a little bit easier to stretch yourself quite thin. But once you want to establish yourself and have a life and other factors outside of work, it becomes really impossible to look at that schedule and think anything other than there's no way I'm staying in this industry. I need to go somewhere else. And so if on the converse, given that was kind of an industry standard, then that's also a standard that business owners were holding up and enforcing their employees or giving to their employees as something that was a given and what they had to work with. And so when we look at that landscape that was created, the landscape itself was built around basically burning people out and understanding that they're gonna probably be gone in a few years anyway. And if you want to go beyond that, then you have to look at what's causing those burnout rates. How do we fix those burnout rates? So that's the first part of that landscape. During COVID, obviously, that burnout rate went a lot higher. It also, the pandemic resulted in 20% of fitness businesses closed, which means it eradicated so many jobs in this industry and took away a lot of its viability until you had places that could kind of resume. Now it's booming, right? It's one of the fastest growing industries, actually. I think it's supposed to increase something like 14% year over year. Don't quote me on that, but it's something insane in terms of how fast the industry is growing. Secondarily, one of the good things about the exploding industry, but also the people within the industry itself is we're typically, people persons, right? We enjoy working with people. We like, seeing growth and progress. For the most part, I think in terms of a study that I have pulled up here, for people between the ages of 18 to 29, there was at minimum a moderate love for their job up to a high love for their job and feeling fulfilled with what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, which is great. It means that there's a lot of people that like their job, they want to keep doing it. But if we reference that 33% burnout rate, that means that there's a lot of people being exploited because they love something. And I think that when I look at that from the perspective of a business owner, of course, it would be technically profitable for me to take advantage of that, but I don't want to, because if I was an employee, I wouldn't want someone to take advantage of my love for something in order to just work me all the time until I can't anymore, and then I have to go and do something else. Because if I'm an employee or if I'm anyone, I want to do the thing that I like to do. I want to do the thing that I'm good at, and then also, looking at this, there's been a huge increase in the degree recipients in exercise physiology and exercise science. So if I have been trained to do this, I love doing this thing and I want to do this for as long as I can, then there had to be a change in the landscape overall. And there's got to be a way that we as business owners can have some impact on what we see within our own environment and the way that we espouse that belief on the greater environment as a whole. And so a lot of what I've been trying to do with Chapel Hill Training is really build in the systemic infrastructure here as a way that other people and other businesses could use it, see that it's possible to do something that can create jobs and create careers over the long term. It just takes a little bit of effort, and it takes re-looking at the things that you do, and re-looking at the way in which you fundamentally create and build your business, both from an infrastructure standpoint, from an actual equipment standpoint, from the way you approach career opportunity, progression, advancement, and so many different things that come along with that, from benefits like PTO, vacation, 401ks, and all of those things. Those things have to be built in, have to be thought of at the beginning, because it's a lot harder to go through and change your business model than it is to work towards those goals and get them there and have people who want to stay there for the long term and understand what you're building. So I say all that because it's important, right? I think one of the other factors along this that I kind of mentioned briefly just now, but is I'm fortunate, I'm very privileged to be in a position of power here. I think, looking at this, I have employees. I basically, have the power to change someone's finances, change my own finances. I have the ability to dictate different policies on when people can work, when they can't work. And I also have a lot of responsibility over people when it comes to that. And frankly, with the way our culture works and the way our society works, a lot of our own personal happiness and well-being is baked into our careers. It's baked into how much time we spend working, and it's baked into how we ultimately feel about ourselves and feel about our long-term prospects as human beings. And when, as a business owner, I have to recognize that I do have that authority and I do have that power and I do have the ability to make those positive changes for people. But there's a few things that I've had to kind of learn to do in order to make sure that I'm using that wisely and that I'm using that in a way that serves me, but also serves those who are helping me and assisting in this vision. The first one is listening to people. And I mean that sincerely. There's hearing people when they say I'm feeling burnt out, or just hearing people when they say, I'm not sure how I'm ever going to afford a house, or any of these items. And then there's listening to them and understanding that what that means is maybe they feel guilt associated with that. Maybe they feel some level of insecurity, whether that's financial or personally. And there's so many other things that you have to take into account of what the person is saying, but also the environment that exists in order to create the things that are possible for them and to provide that opportunity and that safety net and that security that you want to give them. So what does that look like, I guess, in practice? Because I feel like I'm talking a lot about this in a very high level, which I hope is important to just kind of raise awareness. But from an action standpoint, there are very real things that people do that provide this and that I think we should be doing. So the first one is baking in opportunity for advancement. So that means building out pathways like we have here, the tiered trainer system, building out pathways for people to advance their career through continuing education, through experience, through objective measures like their retention rate for clients, their conversion rate for how many times they've brought in a new client, their total hours of services rendered, and things like that, to provide an actual measure of performance, so that way you can track that over time and see if they're improving or not, and then provide rewards for that, and provide incentives for them to stay and stick along that to do it. Secondarily is you got to give people time off. If we have 1 in 3 people in the industry are burnt out, that's not good, and that also means that applies to all of our businesses equally, right? You can't just say, oh, well, it's 1 in 3 people, but not here, right? Like, objectively speaking, that's going to be us, and that's going to be everywhere. So you got to find a way to give people time off. And one of the ways that at least at Chapel Training that I've done is, first and foremost, I've taken the responsibility for getting new clients away from my staff members and put that onto myself and the business overall. So I use the business as this kind of icon, right? This thing that's going to generate potential opportunities, and then the staff members under it are the ones who acquire those opportunities. So the onus for them to go out and find new people or to bring people into the gym just doesn't exist. So you take that responsibility off their plate. Secondarily, I make sure that my practices are good enough to where I can bring in enough people to where they don't have to be here all day. So we've created this thing called shift schedules where most of my staff only have about 8-ish hours, 9-ish hours where they're actually available on any given 5 days of the week, right? And the purpose of that was we deserve work-life balance too, right? So if our clients want to come in at 6 in the morning, well, that's great, but that means we're also working at 6 in the morning. And if I'm going to work at 6 in the morning, should I also be working at 6 in the evening too? Should I be available for those 12 hours? What time am I going to spend with my family? What time am I going to spend with my partner, or what time am I going to spend with an animal that I have, a dog, pet, cat, whoever? When am I going to make friends? What am I going to do to be within the community that I live in if all I'm doing is at work, right? So had to create a way for people to have a better work-life balance, and then started slowly building in PTO, and giving people, actual paid time off. Whether that is sick leave or it's mental health days or it's just vacation. That was the first start. And the purpose of that was just to, one, provide the opportunity for it, but also to kind of take away the general landscape, right, of if we're rendering services, most personal trainers don't actually get paid when they don't have clients. And that makes this job, one, sales focused, but two, it means it's really hard to take a break because that means your income is going to be completely dependent on whether or not your clients show up. At Chapel Hill Training, that's not necessarily the case, but we do exist in that landscape, so there is a little bit of that there. But the point of the PTO and the vacation days was to provide when things come up. And now going forward, we've kind of snowballed that into a new system where we're allowing our clients to kind of pay in half and get access to the gym, and the other half is going to be covered by me. But we're going to give 4 weeks of actual paid time off, full vacation to all of our staff, as well as additional mental health and sick days that are all paid. And the purpose of that is we can't really help people unless we're helping ourselves. We got to take care of ourselves too, and we got to really fight that burnout statistic because it is something that we do really see. And so all of that to say is there are very real things that you can build in to kind of combat this landscape that exists. Like the personal training industry is a beast. It is something that has so many different factions within it. It has so many different people that are looking to play a part in it. It has so many different business models that are successful or successful enough. But I want to make sure that for those of us who do run successful businesses, that you do see businesses that can take care of their employees and do it well, and want to see that become into a career and want to see that evolve, not just here or in a few other places that have been fortunate to be successful, like Chapel Hill Training, but beyond, and so that we can take care of these people. Because the truth of the matter is, as Americans, we're not getting any healthier. We're also not really getting any younger. The oldest generation now are primarily boomers, and the oldest of them are about 80, and we see that people are living longer. They're living unhealthier lives. They need access to frontline healthcare, for lack of a better word. They need access to information from quality individuals. And if people are going to be going into the industry, they're going to be exercise scientists, they're going to be fitness enthusiasts, they're going to be exercise physiologists, they're going to want to get educated on these things. We've got to create the landscape for that career to exist, so that way we can help those people who need it. So we can help people live better and fulfilling lives. We can do our jobs, and we can promote a healthier lifestyle within our environment. And we can have the qualified individuals to do so without them kind of quitting because the infrastructure just wasn't there to support them. So that's kind of all I've got to say today. I know that was kind of a lot of rambling. Hopefully you guys stuck with me there. Maybe it wasn't all rambling, but it was definitely me up there on the high horse. So, but I wanted to put that out there. Hopefully that was succinct. Hopefully you found it valuable. If you're a business owner, I do really hope that you take some of that to heart and understand that the landscape, no matter what it is, there is a landscape outside of your business, and it's important that you understand where you exist in so you can create the factors that help you, one, improve the community around you, but also improve the environment that you create. And if you're an employee, do understand that you can also bring these things up to people that you work for. Talk to them about what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, because it's important for them to hear it. It's important for us to hear it, I guess I should say. So this has been another episode of Fitlosophies Podcast. We will have another episode coming soon. Make sure you comment, like this, let us know what you liked about this segment. Let me know if you liked anything that I said, or if you want to hear me talk about other topics. So without further ado, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you soon.